Hello, everyone. We want to welcome you to the fourth in our series of the FirstFunding Business Building webinar. My name is Ginger Bell. I have Matt Coles, who's the National Sales Manager for FirstFunding. So we're glad to have you guys join us today.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time. And this is a good one. Ginger, I'm happy we're doing this one because it's kind of poignant for what we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've uploaded what we're covering. It's in the chat. I'm also going to send a copy of the recording, and then I'll send what we're covering in a follow-up email. And then I'm also going to send you all recordings to all of the sessions we've done prior to this. And so for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Matt and I had discussed last year in December of doing a business building webinar. We were thinking we were just going to do it in January. And when we started building out the content, it's like there's so many pieces that go into this. And so we decided to make it into smaller segments to really dive into each one of these sections one at a time. And so we're right now at number 4. We've covered our mission and vision, your target goals and objectives. Last month we did branding and positioning. And this month we're diving into really creating that ideal client profile. And so that's what we're going to go through today. Each month we focus on just one section. And so really getting into details on that. And we give you exercises. There's a handout there as far as being able to work on, to print it off, fill it out. I always find, and I learned this actually, Matt, Brian Tracy, I've written a couple books with, and I was having lunch with him one time and I asked him, how he writes his books because he's written so many, and he'll still physically hand writes his books because there's something that happens when you take the physical action of writing something and the connection with the brain. So as you're going through your business building, and we have so many tools that we can use now with AI, we're actually going to jump into some AI today a little bit, but it is that action. So as you're going through, feel free to print off the workbook, fill out the sections, and then what I do, Matt, is I actually read it into ChatGPT, and then it will give an overview of what you've said. So we can kind of cover some of that in the upcoming sessions. So,
Well, I am not the handwriting expert because I wrote 4 thank you cards yesterday and my
nice.
hand cramped up. And I said,
And your
I need
hand
to
cramped
subscribe
up.
to a service that can handwrite these for me.
Yeah, writing is not what it used to be. And I know my son, who's 30, gave me my Mother's Day card. And it's the first time I've actually been with him on Mother's Day in like 8 years. And he had to translate. He couldn't read it. So it is one of those activities, but a good thing
Yeah,
to have.
right.
Okay, so let's dive into this. And today we're going to talk about defining your target audience. And the workbook you'll see, and we've kind of laid this out for you to really talk about what would the perfect client be for you? How old are they? What's their occupation? What's their income range? Where are they located? What's their lifestyle like? What's their family situation? And I really want you maybe to put yourself into that position of who they are and what they think about. And this is your ideal client, guys. So this may not be necessarily what you're seeing a lot of, but building that ideal client. And that's important in being able to identify it. And Matt, you're really good at doing that in a lot of the planning sessions you do with your account executives, right?
Yeah, we talk a lot about this, and so one of the I've been doing this for almost 2 decades, over 2 decades now, and one of the things that in my previous experience, right before I became the national sales manager over here at First Funding, I was out in the field talking to LOs as a wholesale account executive for many years, and then as a RVP, and you sit down with lenders and originators, and you say, okay, well, what kind of borrowers are you looking to attract? And they say anyone, right? Anyone with a pulse. And then
Right.
you go, okay, well, that doesn't really, it's not going to be really the best experience, right? And so one of the things that, especially what's really poignant right now, is that I think a lot of times, a lot of originators try to be everything to everybody. And they sometimes And I think it leads to not a great customer experience. And I see it quite a bit in my previous experience. They'll take on loans that they really just aren't experienced with. Good example is my previous lender. They rolled out one-time close, right? Uh, Pretty complicated product, very sophisticated, takes some time to get to know, and it's not something that you learn on the fly. And so what would end up happening is I'd get the phone call like, hey, I got somebody who wants to do a one-time close. Can you give me the 5-minute recap of what I need to do to make this thing close? It's like, okay, well, it's not really a 5-minute conversation. It's pretty in depth and it goes a lot into it, right? And so
Right.
what I'm really excited about is identifying and building your, this goes back. I love how we're bringing this all together. Identifying who you want to work with, what you want to work with them on, and how you're going to go about it. So all these questions that we're asking, I like how you said it, right? We're trying to figure out the ideal client, not what you're going to say yes to, but who would you prefer to work with, right? And I'm sure everyone on this call and everyone who's listening says, well, I want 780 plus credit scores, 40% LTV rate and term refinances, right? And that would be a pretty easy life to live. But when you're building your messaging and you're building your marketing plan and you're talking about the business that you want to formulate, having this in mind is very, very important. So I'm excited to go through this practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the first start of it is what that ideal client looks like. And then kind of getting into a little bit deeper on that is understanding your audience. And so who your audience is, what are your target market core values? And this goes back to when we went through that and established your core values. And so identifying that and how that aligns with your ideal client, like attracts like. And so when you know who you are and you know who your ideal client is, it helps you to really put your message into place and bring that to market. And so understanding what motivates them, what problems do they need solved? What are their goals? What do they value? And so having a good idea on what that looks like is important when you're understanding your audience, and then that will help us to really define better how to put some of those messaging pieces together as you're building your branding.
There's some really interesting statistics out there. The NAR statistics, I don't know what you call it, Twitter, follow X, I don't know what you call it these days.
I think it's X,
Really interesting
formerly known
statistics.
as Twitter.
Yeah, formerly known as Twitter. They put out some really interesting statistics. And one of the things that I always was bringing to the attention of originators is if you look at the combination of who's your ideal customer, is it first-time home buyers? Is it investors? Or is it all cash buyers? Well, according to NAR, those three categories represent about 84% of the total market,
Interesting.
right? So if you could just figure out, and the messaging is different for each one of them.
Exactly.
And if you could be a consistent brand and messenger for that one audience, you're going to capture a massive piece of the market, right? And so this is why going through this practice is important because if you're going to deal with first-time home buyers, I would imagine, I'm not in an originator seat. I would imagine that there's a lot of times when you're talking to a first-time home buyer and they have to get everyone's opinion. The father-in-law comes in and looks at the property. Hey, I have a friend of a friend who can get you a cheaper rate. Like all that comes with the world of being in a first-time home buyer. Probably don't have to deal with that if you're focused in on the investor side of it. But the investor side of it, they're gonna know what the policies look like. You're not gonna be able to get anything past them. You're gonna have to be dialed in with the conversation, and then the all cash buyers, right? Completely different audience. So identifying this is really, really important as we go through this. And there's so many more different categories. I know we're gonna dive into a couple of them that we can focus on, Ginger.
Yeah, and it's okay to segment that out too. So it's completely okay to say one target is first-time homebuyers, one target is veterans, one target is investors. And again, you want to get into their mindset. And so looking at these key questions can really help. And I love this. And so often we don't spend time on this, Matt. But why does your target audience need your services? And understanding that and what their why is, because if you can get to their why, and what keeps them up at night? What are the things they think about? What's important to them? Then it can help you to be able to immediately capture their attention in the marketing that you're doing. And then as they have objections, you'll have a better idea, a clear understanding of how to overcome those objections. So I think it's important to do that. The next is, what results can you help your target market achieve? That's going to be different for a first-time home buyer, as opposed to if you're talking to an investor. It's going to be, a different conversation. It's a different mindset. So again, looking at those different targets and getting into that frame of mind that they have and answering those questions. The next is, what life situations have occurred in your target market? Maybe they're moving. Maybe maybe you specialize in people who are, relocating. Maybe you're in a place like Nashville, Tennessee, or Atlanta, Georgia. I was talking to someone yesterday, Matt, who is having so many people move into Atlanta, specifically from California. And so we said, okay, well, let's really go after this target and let's start putting together some of your branding and your videos and things like that. And talking about those life situations and talking about, what to look for and what to do and how to handle the transition.
I
So
gotta,
those are things to think
yeah,
about.
I
Pardon
got
me?
I got a good one about that. That when I saw this slide pop up, we live in a gig economy,
Mm,
right? I mean, people are working side hustles, side jobs all the time. I don't necessarily think, and when I think about this, what life situations have occurred. I don't necessarily think that a lot of people want to be working a lot of gig jobs, but they're trying to make ends meet, right? And
mhm.
so trying to put yourself in that, like, hey, how do I, as a subject matter expert, talk about, hey, I understand what it's like to try to figure out how to make, a mortgage payment work in this economy, and here's what I am an expert at, and here's how I can help you achieve that. Those are the kind of things that you really want to place yourself into those situations.
I love that. Yeah, and maybe going through and an income analysis or reading, tax, getting into your tax, income reports where it's like this is how we can use multiple incomes. I mean, we have a generation that makes money in ways that we would have never thought about. And so what can you use? If you are an influencer, can you use that income? What do you need to do that? Those are the kind of things. Those are the questions that they have. Those are things that keep them up at night. So if you can get into what they're thinking and what, when they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, what they're thinking about, and you answer those questions, then you create that connection. And so we always talk about, I used to do some coaching for presentations, and you'll see this if you watch a speaker on stage, a good speaker, they'll start their story talking about them, but they'll immediately transition and talk about you and place yourself. And a lot of times they'll start with the story and then they say, have you ever been in a situation where we're looking at moving and or using the example, have you ever been in a situation where you have these multiple jobs and you're not really sure if they're going to work? You want to get that connection between you and them established, because as soon as you can start getting them to think about themselves, then you have their attention. And so that's why this is a really important exercise to do. What concerns might they have? How can you help them overcome those concerns? So those are things, and you can do this for, multiple audiences. If you have multiple audiences, print this off, several of them, and do it for each one of those audiences.
I'm a big believer in that last one, right? Because, my seat, right? We talk to a lot of business owners that are considering moving from broker to banker. Um, and I know what their concern, I don't claim to know all of their concerns, but I do know the general sense of some of the objections or the concerns that they might have. And, we just address it right up front. And I don't say, hey, I know you're probably concerned about this because it may not be a concern for that particular person, but based upon the hundreds and hundreds of conversations we've all had, we can get a general sense of what the objections and or the concerns are. And it almost starts to bring people's wall down a little bit when you say, listen, I've talked to a lot of people in this world. One of the things that has been a big concern for people in your position may be this,
Right.
XYZ, right? And then you say, I understand XYZ. Let me explain XYZ and why I don't think it necessarily needs to be a concern of yours and how I've dealt with it in the past, right? I mean, just bringing that wall down of addressing it right away.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to jump in. So, and type in the chat, let me know how many of you have started using ChatGPT or, Google, I mean, whatever it is you're using, Claude, for some of your daily activities. And just, type in the chat, let me know how many of you are starting to do that. Michael, you're doing some of it. And if you're not, that's okay. Glenn, you're using it. That's great. I use it daily and sometimes too much, maybe. But it's one of those things that there's a lot it can do. I don't want you to become reliant on it in this exercise. I want you to go through, really get into who that ideal client is. But what ChatGPT can do is it can help you to really kind of hone in on some of those. And so, what I've done, and we're going to get into this exercise, I have actually created for you the chats. So I've written the prompt to put into ChatGPT, so you honestly can just copy and paste it and put it into your chat GPT. And so I always liked, Matt, I'm one of those things. It's like, I don't know if A is going to rule the world, but I believe in being polite to it. So hopefully it remembers. I find I honestly do get better responses when I'm polite. And sometimes I'm not polite. I'm like, yeah, you know what? You messed up on that one. Do it over again. It's like, oh, sorry about that. But this is the prompt to put in. I'm a mortgage professional. I want to help. I want help identifying my target market so I can better focus on my marketing and outreach. Please ask me a series of questions to help me get clearer on who I serve best. And I'm ready to answer questions like this. And this is what I put together. What state or region do I work in? What loan products do I specialize in? What kinds of clients do I enjoy working with the most? First time buyers, investors, veterans. What price ranges or income brackets are most common in my area? What are the typical concerns or goals of my ideal client? Credit issues, down payment help, buying a bigger home. And again, getting into some of those, the questions, the things that keep them up at night. What values, lifestyle, or family situations do they have? What local industries or occupations do my clients work in? And that's important because you're going to frame that language a little bit different in your marketing. What are some life events that typically lead them to seek a mortgage? Is it a marriage? Is it a kids, divorce, job relocation? I've talked to some people, they focus on people who are going through a divorce and that's their target market. What are some problems I solve regularly for clients and what makes my approach or customer service unique? And this is very personal, but it's important to be able to have an idea to answer these questions. And then I end it with, please help me organize my answers into a clear picture of my ideal target audience, including demographics, motivations, and how I can position my services to meet their needs. And so, do you guys want to see what this looks like? I'm going to open up.
It's one of those things where it's like, Ginger, the chat GPT is, you know, it's there to help organize the thoughts, almost like asking a good friend, like, hey, you know a little bit about me. Why don't you tell me what you observe in my business?
Right.
And it really is kind of eye-opening as a helpful opportunity to kind of get a out, even though it's your own thoughts, to get an outside perspective of what your business looks like. It
Yeah.
just comes across as organized and well thought out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I have just a standard GPT that I have in my chat GPT. I have several different GPTs that I use here, and you can customize those. We're not going to talk about that today. But what I am going to do is I'm going to just take this prompt here, if I can open it up, and I am going to copy it. So hold on, I'm gonna have to.
And while we're doing this, Ginger, when you're always wanting to take a look at this as a whole and say, you know what, add and subtract any questions, that you based upon. You don't have to necessarily cut and paste everything that's in here. And you can customize it to your own experience, right? And I know there's different areas, and we have some really established people on this call. Maybe they're, looking to recruit. You can do this as a recruiting tool as well, right? All that great stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so many things you can do with it. Great point. So now that we have that, chat comes back and it says, let's walk through a short series of targeted questions. And so it gets into this, what states or regions do you work in the most? Are there any specific? And so, and then loan expertise. So getting into answering some of those questions are important. And so it didn't give me the rest.
Mine came up with all 10 right away. So
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes. So you already went and copy and pasted it in there?
yeah, I did it right before you did. It came up not as pretty with the magnifying glass and the dollar and the little icons, but yes.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to tell it I don't need all the emojis.
Yeah.
So it looks like it added a few things in here as well. So it's good. So what you can do then is you can copy this and then you can answer each of these in there, or you can put it into a Word document. And so what I did is I had tested this before. And so I just went ahead and I put it onto the slide. So you'll see that too, some of the answers. And so I'm just going to copy and paste what I have for the answers. And so I just answered the questions. It said, what state or region do I work in? And then some of the loan programs, the kind of clients, what price ranges. So I just answered all the questions that I had asked it to ask me. And just for the sake of time, I went and did that. So you can do that and then send that off. And then it should come back with a pretty good answer. And so this gets into your demographics, so the region, Northern California, your price range, income level, your occupations, your lifestyle, life stage, your home style preference. And then it gets into the psychographics and lifestyle, and that's getting into that why. So long-term investments, quality of life, financial growth, smart decision making, busy professionals who value convenience, and then getting into some of their personal goals, which is important. Pain points is a great area to concentrate on, especially when you're making content. So some of their pain points, navigating high down payments in competitive markets, managing larger monthly payments while managing cash flow for their business, finding good values in strong neighborhoods, balancing personal investment goals and homeownership, and then complexity and qualifying. So a lot of the things that we had talked about. And then I love this, what you solve for them. Help them secure just the loan products that work in their financial profile, guide them through documentation, income documentation, identify homes with strong investment potential or lifestyle appeal, provide clear, confident mortgage planning. And I think that sometimes, Matt, we miss so much of that because we think of ourselves as transactional, and you're not transactional. I mean, and I know you all have clients that have been clients for a long time, and now you're seeing the kids. So that's the other thing too, is to think about that.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that this also gives, one of the challenges that a lot of LOs or originators have is they don't know what their voice is, right? And what I mean by that is they're like, I don't know where to start with what I want to speak about in this world of social media and or self-promotion. And this really gives you that voice because everything that's hitting on is you. This is going to be your conversation track. You're not trying to force your way into something. And I'll just, again, sorry to use past experience, but I'll never forget one of my favorite former colleagues, Mark Reeve over at
as a,
Closet, right?
yeah,
he was the head of our reverse division. And one of the things that he always said in a slide deck when we were talking about reverse mortgage is, do you like talking to old people? Do old people like talking to you? Right? And it works vice versa, right? So if you're trying to cram yourself into a senior borrower in this example, and you don't really enjoy the borrower that sends over pages 1, 3, 5, 7 on a photo individual document, right? Those are the things that you just got to know about yourself. And I love that this chat GPT and what the exercise you just went through, it's your voice. That's
Right.
what you should be focused on. Yes, of course you can, veer away from it if you would like, but really when you're getting started, this is where to get started with.
Right. Exactly. So it's also gone and it's given us some marketing strategy tips. So some content ideas, some partnerships, networking with CPAs, wealth managers, realtors, startup advisors, and then it gets into channels. And this is one of those things because I have done so much around, branding and video and things like that, that I know a lot of us miss in the mortgage industry is really doing things on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is great because, especially if you're going after professionals, because that's where they are. And so, even though we tend to think of LinkedIn as a B2B, it can be a very strong B2C. And so, and at any point you should always have a good LinkedIn profile with your picture on it and content on it because it is the one social media profile that comes up in your Google searches. And so if somebody is searching for you, that's one of the first things that will come up is your LinkedIn profile. So if you haven't put attention into LinkedIn, I would strongly encourage you to do that. And then it looks at niche networking events, podcasts. I love podcasts, webinars for entrepreneurs. And that's the thing, it's like talking about doing webinars. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday that I do consulting for. And she does a lot of Facebook ads. And so she had someone ask about doing Facebook ads for a webinar. And webinars are great, but you have to automate them. So those are things to think about. Obviously, YouTube, Instagram for local market insights. I think we miss that again a lot. You don't have to be a realtor to do market insights. That's a great thing, and that's what people are searching for. So now,
The Before you go on, Ginger, the greatest thing about webinars is that what are we scheduled for today? For 45 minutes?
yep,
All right, so we're scheduled for 45 minutes today. There's got to be at least 6 or 7 things that we'll be able to chop out of this and re-promote 7 different ways to Sunday, right?
right.
So doing a webinar, while you may not get the audience that you're looking for at the initial attack, at the initial presentation of it, that's not the goal. The goal is to get 6 or 7 things that you could just make a 30-second clip out of and then just
Mm.
repurpose it time and time again.
Yeah, and you're building your list. So when you're building your list, you want to make sure you're following up with that list as well and building your database. And you can do that with realtors too. So yes, I've loved webinars for many, many years. Okay, so what are we going to do with this now? So this can help us a little bit, right? And so what I have, and in the slide deck, you'll see this. And in the slide deck, I just put some examples in there for you because sometimes ChatGPT is down. So I just wanted to make sure we could cover things. But the next prompt, and this is the prompt for marketing to your ideal mortgage client. And this is what we're looking at. So you can take this and you can copy that in. I'm going to actually take part of this prompt because it already has the information. And so um, I'm going to remove, here's the summary, and I'm going to say, use the summary you've created. So I'm going to change this just a little bit. Oh, it may start doing that anyway. So what I'm doing is I'm asking it to help me to create a marketing message or a slogan that appeals to this client, social media post ideas that would catch their attention, topics for short videos or blog posts that would speak to their pain points or their goals. We don't want to talk about, hey, you want to get a mortgage? No, they don't. They don't want to get a mortgage. They want to solve a problem. And so that's what you want to do your content about. That's what your branding is about. And then I've asked it to create a brief client persona. And so you can use this and you can go and create a custom GPT. That's a conversation for another day. And I know once we get done with this series, Matt, I think we're going to go on to a little bit of AI stuff. And then I also added, I want it to sound friendly and conversational, like I'm a helpful guide, not a salesperson. And so that will help in the messaging that it's creating. So let's see what it came up with. We have our marketing message or slogan, smart mortgages for big thinkers, helping entrepreneurs and executives find homes that work as hard as they do. I like that. Other variations you can rotate, real estate lending for people who think like CEOs. Let's find a home that works for your life and your bottom line, making mortgages make sense for busy professionals. These are all really good taglines and things you can incorporate even into your website. Again, those are the things you want to think about. We're building a brand, we're building a message, we're building your persona. It came up with some social media post ideas. Again, friendly, professional. Are you a business owner, a tech executive looking for more space and smarter financing? And then you can include a short video or a graphic that highlights how to leverage self-employment income in mortgage approval. Second one, think buying real estate is just a personal goal. It's also a smart investment move. We need more conversations out there like this, guys. Share a post about long-term wealth from buying in high-value neighborhoods. Next message, too busy running your business to chase mortgage paperwork? I've got you. Highlight your flexible availability and hands-on communication style. Next, your mortgage should work for your lifestyle, not against it. Share a story or a testimonial. You see that Matt brings in stories. People remember stories. People relate to stories. So bringing those stories in from a past client, don't have to even use their name, but just give it as an example, are great things to do. Next, from tech startups to homeownership, your next big move deserves a guide who gets it. And then you can pair it with a quick behind the scenes reel from a local neighborhood tour, an open house. And then it goes on. So it's giving some short video or blog topics, and they're related to who? Your client. So when we filled out this persona, we said that this particular loan officer is in California. Their clients or their ideal clients they like to work with are higher net worth, self-employed. So that's what all the messaging is about. So that's why it's so important when you find that target audience to double down on it and to answer their questions. By using ChatGPT, it can help you get into some of those ideas. Things that you probably, I mean, how many of you see things on there? It's like, wow, that's a really good idea. I think I'm going to use it, right? And then it's given us our client persona. And this is good because you can actually make just a custom GPT based on this persona, that it has all this information in here. So whenever you want to speak to this ideal client persona, you can just pull up your Alex GPT and then you can ask it to create you a social media post or an email message or a webinar topic or a newsletter, and it'll already have all this information that they're a tech executive or small business owner, they're in Northern California, they're likely married with kids or planning to start a family. Their values are smart financial planning, efficiency, and quality of life. Their pain points, limited time, complex income structures. They want guidance without being talked down to. Goals, buy a home in a desirable area that fits both lifestyle and investment goals. Why they choose you. You respect their time, you speak their language, and you offer solutions that fit both in their personal life and their financial strategy. So now it's going to go on and it's asking, do you want to make the info as a content calendar or marketing guide? You can get into this. I mean, it will do a lot for you in creating content, but now you have all that information. And so here I have some examples. So if you're going through the slide deck, that's what you'll see. And see, it's even given us a same thing there. And so that is what we have for getting through your target audience. And so I'm going to open it up for questions.
Yeah, and Ginger, it just all starts with putting pen to paper with who do you like to work with, right? It's
Right.
that simple. right? And it's really, that whole exercise and everything that was just put out there with the chat GPT gives you the roadmap to put it out there, but really identifying who do I like to work with, how do I like to help people, and who do I like to serve.
Right.
Just start with that, right? I mean,
Exactly.
everything that we've gone through in every one of our cadences so far has been pretty simple about just taking a beat. I work with a lot of great business owners. Sometimes the planning aspect of it takes a back seat, and or sometimes we're so focused on the go, 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 it might be worth it for you to, even if you've been doing this for 25 years, 10
Right.
years, 15 years, take a beat and reset, right? Okay, well, you probably aren't the same originator or business owner you were 15 years ago. Take a look at the branding that you're putting out there today and maybe refocus that on what you're actually doing and working on today.
Exactly.
Something I think is so important is for us old timers who've been doing it for 38 years. When I was young getting started, I was trying to reach me. Now that
Yeah.
I'm me, I'm trying to reach my old me. And it's understanding the ability to communicate in that respect where, hey, that looks great. Well, it looks great to the old me, but it
Yeah.
doesn't look great to the young me or the young me of today, let's say. So it's a question of turning the tables. But you also mentioned about working with their children. I have two clients, I'm in the fourth generation. Because when I was in my
Wow.
20s, they were in their 60s and vice versa for it goes down the line. I
Yeah.
knew their great grandparents. They did not.
And
So
that's
it, mm,
powerful. I mean,
mhm,
it's so funny. I had a client years ago who is very young and started in the industry in college.
mhm.
And her whole tagline is, not your daddy's lender.
Yeah.
And speaking to the younger ones. And so, flipping on that, you can talk about that having
Well,
that experience.
the thing that's different also is I've lost my referral sources because they were the older referral sources. That now that I've caught up to their age, they're no longer or not working in the industry or whatever. So where I've built in this whole good referral business, it was an older clientele or middle-aged clientele who referred. So the CPAs, the business managers, all those fun little people are no longer those people for me. So it's now reversing those roles. So now it's embracing what technology is offering. Ginger, when you started, we didn't have this stuff.
No, no.
So, I mean, we were still having fun when I showed Tim how to use index cards back in the day when Tim Brahim worked and rented a room at my home.
Right.
So we were working in a different area of what we did.
Yeah.
So it's embracing what we can in order to get to where we need to go or continue. And
Right.
that seems to be the biggest thing. It's getting out of your own head and out of your own way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you bring up a very good point too. As far as we live in a fragmented society between what that looks like in messaging. And so, having an idea what that ideal client is more important now than ever. And you can have several
Hmm.
different messages. And it's not that you're going to be, everything to everyone, but I think it is good to start with that idea. Um, and then build from there. And yeah,
Yeah.
wouldn't you
I
love
mean,
to go back to that
doing
time,
nights.
Michael, when
Yeah.
when Tim was doing and
Yeah,
building?
I mean, doing 19 years of talk radio, radio has changed. As you can see behind me, I have the two stations I still do, but
Yeah,
it's a different audience and you're reaching a different demographic
yeah,
here in Southern California. And you're talking to many, but you're talking to none.
yep,
You're talking to an audience who's not listening to you for the whole hour. They're
yeah,
listening to a segment or an item
yeah,
and it's reaching that audience differently. But also the fact is I can actually come up with a whole topic of a radio show and tell it in four separate sections with no
yeah,
guests and da 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 and it shoots out a whole outline of a show.
yep,
I mean, that's scary. I
yeah,
mean, we go back to writing our own little fun little things.
yeah,
Now it's, oh my God, I don't have to do anything anymore. Just, gee, I have 5 minutes, and that's terrible.
yeah.
But you also have to have the right delivery in order to do the stories and the right items and integrate it into what you want to do.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
that's where
using it as an
AI can
outline,
help.
but not a rule.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you still recording your podcast on Wednesdays?
Myself,
Your radio show?
No, I actually do the show live on
Oh,
Saturdays.
on Saturdays.
And then I also take the Sunday, I'm on KRF 101, which you see behind me, but that show's on Sunday mornings. So I
Cool.
do a live show Saturday and then use that Saturday for the Sunday.
Yeah.
But
So there's
and
another
again, I've never
medium.
really done
Yeah.
the podcasts. You know, that's something I've not done, put it on YouTube or podcast. I've not done those things.
Okay.
So those are something where I never graduated to that, where I have all those years of past shows. Not that someone's going to go listen to them, but it's something where I'm talking about the market today and all that. So they're not
Yeah.
necessarily evergreen. But you know, it's reaching that audience, but making them, it's funny when you reach radio people, you have to make them uncomfortable to make a decision. And if
Right.
you give them too much information, then they'll try to do it themselves.
Exactly.
So it's like your best shows are your worst shows because
Yeah.
you gave them too much. So
Absolutely.
different mindset.
Yeah. So I love that. Matt, Michael would be a good person to have as a guest on a podcast down the road too.
Awesome. Will do.
Yeah, I love that. Very good. Okay, so our next webinar will be on June 10th. I'll send the information out to you. I'm going to send a copy of the recording. So if you want to pass this on to somebody else, if you want to go back and watch it, by all means do so. But I want to thank all of you for joining us. Print it off, do your homework. Cameron, good to see you. I'll connect you with Matt. Randy, good to see you. For those of you out who are on as well, we want to thank you so much, and we'll see you next month. Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Thank
guys.
you.